Previously, we've discussed the Internet of Things, IoT, a physical network device that exchanges data. IoT devices are proliferating at a dizzying rate, and the cybersecurity community is scrambling to keep up. Organizations like the Center for Reverse Engineering and Assured Microelectronics, or the CREAM Lab, at Morgan State are doing their part to train the next generation of IoT cybersecurity researchers. In this episode, special guests Dr. Kevin Kornegay and Dr. Michel Cornigay discuss IoT cybersecurity, what they're doing to raise awareness, and how they're recruiting and training cybersecurity talent to address IoT cybersecurity issues. Dr. Kevin Kornegay is the director of the Cybersecurity Assurance and Policy Center and the IoT security professor in the ECE department. His research interests include reverse engineering, hardware assurance, secure embedded system design, radio frequency and millimeter wave integrated circuit design, high-speed circuits, broadband wired and wireless communication systems, and cyber physical systems. Dr. Michel Cornigay is Associate Director at the Cybersecurity Assurance and Policy Center and Associate Professor in the ECE department. Her research interests include wireless security, solid-state power amplifier design using 3 to 4 semiconductors, high-frequency device characterization and modeling, and reconfigurable electronics. Kevin, Michel, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And thanks for having us.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you. I know it is a Zoom-filled existence these days in the age of COVID, and so I appreciate you taking a little bit of time for some extra Zoom to talk about IoT cybersecurity with us. I know I'd visited the CREAM Lab a couple of years ago. I think you were just kind of getting underway, and we were just so excited about the environment that you were building and some of the talent that you were cultivating. And so I'm really excited to check in with you and talk a little bit about what you're doing to help bring into the cybersecurity research field fresh talent. So I like starting the show with this very simple question because there are I don't know that there is consensus among the community, but what is an IoT device exactly?
We view it as define it as an electronic device that interacts with the environment, collects data, formulates some decision about that data, and then passes it along to a higher decision-making authority. So it performs 3 functions. It senses, it processes, and it communicates. So it performs those 3 primary functions. So examples, and they come in a wide variety of shapes and forms and so forth. So it could be a simple humidity or water sensor that's out in a field that's in a remote area, or it could be an automobile, like a Tesla. So that's those are 2 vastly differing examples.
What's interesting is, microelectronics have really grown up over, the past 40 or 50 years, or, depending on where you want to put the line in the sand. But things like cars and sensors for agriculture have existed in an analog way for a very long time, like much longer than that. So why is it that manufacturers are bringing digital components into these systems? Like what's the compelling use case for it?
Well, it's mainly driven by the consumer. So consumers have this insatiable need for more functionality. So with the evolution and advances in semiconductor technology, you can pack more transistors on a chip. And as such, with more transistors, you can do more things, right? So today you have these, like, for example, my iMac, it's a multi-core, it has this multi-processor system. So you have these, and because of advances in technology, you can shrink many processors that, one processor back in 10 years ago, you can pack one processor in a 1 square centimeter area, whereas today you can probably pack 8 or 16 with for example, 7 nanometer FinFET technology. So it's because of those advances. So with those multiple processors, you can do a lot of things.
Right. So we're starting to see more digital components getting put into all of these things that were not computers before, right? For reasons of serving the consumer and being able to build more functionality and do things cheaper. One of the things that's so interesting is that a lot of these microelectronics now run, software, right? Like you have a software engineer who can write code and fundamentally change what that integrated circuit is doing more or less on the fly, right? Michel, what kinds of security concerns does that start to create, that these things are so configurable and flexible and have so much feature built into them?
Well, so in my area, I look at wireless transmission, so electromagnetic transmission. You can't see it, you can't feel it, you can't taste it, but we know it exists because we're able to make phone calls, we're able to watch direct TV, satellite TV. So we're able to do a lot of different things. And it just opens up areas where folks can eavesdrop, they can listen because the interface is just so open. And because we're having a proliferation of devices entering the market, again, the biggest concern is about profit versus security and privacy, because adding those additional things are going to incur some costs. And when we think about security, when we think about privacy, a lot of times the end user, they just want to use the product, right? Rather than read all the security, privacy, and user agreement information, they just really just want to use the product. So it does open up a well of issues for users, for government and DoD, as we begin to use parts, whether it's through a supply chain where folks can infiltrate, place Trojans, and just little things that could possibly leave our systems open and vulnerable.
And sometimes it's just, software misconfiguration and bad credentials, right? Like we saw a week or two ago, the water supply down in Oldsmar, right? With TeamViewer instance that appears it was just on the internet. Some credentials may have been on, like a black market compromised list, and somebody logged into an ICS SCADA system and cranked up the lie concentration, right?
Yeah. So today we live in a society where everything is connected to everything. So access, what that presents to a bad actor is they can come from anywhere. You don't know. They don't have to be local. They don't require physical access. They can be, in a hack shop in China or Russia or somewhere in the Middle East. So, and they can wreak havoc. And that's what keeps us up at night, but it also pays the bills, helps to pay the bills.
Right. Yeah. And Michel, to your point, so much of what drives consumer decision making is it's the features. It's what can I do with this device? It's not, is it secure against, brute force attacks against a private key? Like people don't generally make decisions about that thing. And so, in this example, the reason that TeamViewer instance was hanging out on the internet was so that supervisors could check in and make sure that, the values are within bands and they can monitor, and there were legitimate purposes for remote access, particularly like in the age of COVID. But that flexibility and feature set is what created the attack surface for an attacker to get in. And so, one of the themes that we've had in guests that have come on the podcast is that these IoT devices are just so dang useful. And so we're going to continue to see a proliferation, I think, of these devices at a dizzying rate. More and more of these things coming to the market, more manufacturers putting more featureful products. Stuff that we traditionally, have used that didn't have digital components is going to continue to have more digital components. And, in our case at Shift5, we look at things like locomotives and military weapon systems and maritime vessels. So you're going to see this infusion of digital technology coming into the space. What I'm really interested in digging into with you guys is that you're answering the call of saying, okay, look, there's going to be a flood of these devices coming in. It's just that is going to happen. The economic use case is just too compelling. How do we as a cybersecurity community deal with this influx of components where the manufacturers historically haven't really thought a lot about cybersecurity? And how do our my conjecture, especially trying to hire folks that are versed in being able to look at these devices, is that we are unable to keep up with this highly trained and talented workforce of people that look at IoT cybersecurity devices. So tell me a little bit about what at Morgan State you guys are doing to help raise the next generation of IoT cybersecurity professionals.
Well, that's a great question. We just stood up a new PhD program that entitled Secure Embedded Systems. And within that program encompasses a wide variety of competencies that in particular areas to address this three-headed device. So from the sensor side, they have to address security from all three aspects. The processor side, dealing with architectures, even the communication side, dealing with protocols, the application side, dealing with AI, there's also cryptography. So the students have to have a wide range set of skills. And so the PhD program is specifically designed to provide those skills to the students. And it's unique. It's the only one in the state of Maryland. I think it's the first in the nation, but it really addresses this three-headed monster. And because of cybersecurity, to address a lot of the problems, you have to be multifaceted. And there are plenty of stakeholders. So there's software engineering. It involves embedded systems design, adversarial AI. There's all kinds of nice courses. And it's also designed to minimize, to increase the production of PhD students, to do so in the least amount of time. It's very research intensive, so students can start they're working on a research problem from day one. And so, for example, someone coming in with a master's degree can finish the program in 2 to 3 years, depending, if they come in with a project and everything falls in line, they can finish. A bachelor's degree student can get a PhD in 4 years, 4 to 5 years. Again, assuming, and then there's the other issue, challenges, providing funds to support the student. So we have a wide variety of options to support the students financially. We have various fellowship programs, such as the DoD Cybersecurity Scholarship Program. There's a scholarship for service types of things. And then we also have our standard CAP scholarship. And then you have your other fellowships that, such as the NSF Graduate Research Fellowship, the SMART Fellowship. You have a host of opportunities. But our students that enter our program are all funded through either sponsored research grants with our industrial partners. So we also provide a very hands-on experiential experience for the students, and where we involve, again, we adopt it takes a village to raise a family philosophy or strategy towards how we train and educate our students. So we involve the stakeholders, our partners, which include the federal agencies and DoD industry, who not only serve as mentors, but they also serve on the students' dissertation committees. So along the way, students are involved with other experiential learning experiences, such as internships or summer internships and the like. So that where our job is that at the end of the student's journey, they have multiple options. So when they reach that decision point and where they're trying to decide, well, whether they're going to go to industry, whether they're going to go, or they can decide early in terms of scholarship for service, where they have to provide a year of service for each year of support they receive. So those are the variety of activities that we engage in to help prepare our students.
And I just wanted to add to that is, so there has been a lot of focus, with the initial startup with CAP, with developing our curriculum, particularly our graduate program and our undergraduate program, where the goal is to support a pipeline of students from pre-freshman all the way up through the PhD program that Kevin just described. Our next phase is now to concentrate on going beyond, before they actually get to college, where we're looking at the middle school students and the high school students, and providing opportunities and activities for students. Right now, we have put on a proposal to support middle school females within Baltimore City, really directing our focus on underserved populations in the cyber community. And also, one of the things I did wanted to mention was also the fact that, with there's still the divide, there's still this digital divide that exists as it relates to underserved populations. And one of the things that is near and dear to both of our hearts is being able to reach those populations, provide them the role models and experiences in order to attract, recruit, and retain them in these cyber areas, because the diversity is definitely needed and can provide fruitful information to making and addressing the different cyber challenges that we have today.
Yeah, so just to follow on what Michel said, it's not just diversity in the true sense of diversity, but diversity of thought that you want to bring, that you have to bring to the table to address this cyber problem. The other thing too is that's unique about our program, and I'll just throw out a few stats. So, Morgan, we traditionally, our student population is roughly about close to 85% African American, which means, and who are drawn from the local counties, which means they are U.S. citizens. So we tap into that tremendous resource, find these diamonds in the rough, and we shape and form these students into these incredible cybersecurity engineers. The other thing is that, so of our PhD students in the program currently, about 83% of the students are U.S. citizens. Okay, 43% are women. Okay, these are PhD students. And we're very proud of that, but we work hard to establish that. But that's the uniqueness of our program that sets us apart from our peers at Hopkins, College Park, Baltimore County. So we call it the 80-20 rule. So whereas, you look at the graduate student population at our peer institutions, they're 20% U.S., but yet getting speaking to the digital divide so where industry agencies, they pump money into so the ROI they get back for that is 20%. Whereas Morgan, we're 80%. So imagine the impact we would have if they take some fraction of the investment that they make into these other, peer institutions, and they put it into schools like Morgan. And so I think we're getting a lot of attention now because of the fact that folks have realized, they're on to something. We need, so we're getting a lot of requests. Well, we want you students, but then we ask, well, where's the relationship? We want the same relationship that you have with our peers, so that we can deliver on, at the same scales. But
right.
Fortunately, and we worked hard at being the place, and now we've kind of flipped the script because we have our peers working in our lab. So the digital divide, we were able to invert that. So anyways, I just wanted to.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating because first off, it's just remarkable, the pipeline that you've built. It's something that is truly difficult to do because so much of, cybersecurity professionals that I've interacted with, they came to it sort of on their own independently. Like they got really into computer games and computer game hacking, and that led into systems programming, and that led into a job at, the intelligence community or something like that. And there's this sort of nonlinear meandering path. And a key component of that, I think there were like two ingredients, right? One was role models, something you mentioned, which is people that you look up to that do this thing. They're cybersecurity professionals. They get into, programming or whatever. And the second is an affinity towards technology. And so if you're in a context where you have role models that do this sort of thing, and you've got technology around you, it's a breeding ground for these kinds of folks. And what you've done is sort of created a pipeline from very young age. It sounds like middle schools where you're headed with this, all the way through PhD, where you can nurture this pipeline of talent in like historically underrepresented groups in this industry. So it sounds like a Herculean task. I would love to hear more about how you do that. How do you cultivate people and put mentors in front of them and immerse them in technology so that they have the potential to learn about this field?
Yeah. So there are mentors. So to mentorship, in addition to industrial mentors, peer mentors play a role as well. So faculty. So again, it gets back to this. It takes a village to raise. So, and we're doing this in a significantly resource-constrained environment. So most HBCUs, and again, I don't want to continue to harp on this fact, but it's not easy to do. But we were able to accomplish this through creativity and innovation. And through our programs, we have a whole range of programs that support the various stages, pipeline stages for the students. And we write grants, continuously, research grants, workforce grants and so forth to get so we can have funds to support our students. And then once we create this environment, we have this vision, create the environment, and all we need are the students. And we bring them into this environment, and they just flourish. And but there's a lot of energy that goes into forging these rocks into diamonds. And the other thing too, that's critical, essential in this to work in this space is critical thinking. That's the one thing, because you have to be able to connect the dots. All right. So and so that requires a certain kind of training, because again, these students come from these certain schools that are deficient in math and physics. So, for example, you need those problem-solving skills, because that's what we do with tinkerers. You have to be able to figure it out.
It's all puzzles, right?
Right. Yeah. And you don't have a script, you don't have a data sheet, so you have to logically decompose. So you're dealing with a complexity, and you're decomposing it down to a simple problem. And the only way to accomplish that is through critical thinking that allows you to make the right kinds of assumptions and to validate them and so forth. And then the other thing is hypothesis driven.
Yeah, like the scientific method, right?
Yes. So that's one of the things that we teach our students, and that's essential to for them to have to develop. They're developing their critical thinking skills. So
it's great. I mean, it's a really unique approach among, I think, cybersecurity talent funnels to use academic institutions to generate the talent. So many of my peers don't have formal training in any of these things. You mentioned so many critical topics like cryptography and software engineering and reverse engineering and physics for like the physical layer. There's so many components that mesh into learning about this, being able to study the cybersecurity properties or engineer some cybersecurity properties of something. And a lot of people who practice in this field don't have formal training in it. They did, if they even did an undergraduate degree, maybe it's in, English or something, and they just this curiosity, they had to do it individually. And the idea that you are able to carefully curate an academic experience for folks to go through and then come out at the other end, to use your analogy, as a diamond, as this like very highly curated, potent combination of talents it's a daunting thing. And one of the things that strikes me is, we see, and you have obviously deep experience in computer engineering and computer science departments. But one of the things that I've seen, both as someone who hires technology talent and has been around technology for a long time, is that academic institutions that teach traditional computer science, for example, it's a really critical set of skills, to your point, a lot of critical thinking, a lot of sort of proofs and understanding at a theoretical level the properties of these computing machines. But, they don't teach Java or professional C++ or software engineering principles, so that, when you hit the ground running so I guess what I'm getting at in a very roundabout way is how given that you have an academic pipeline, an academic approach to building these well-rounded folks that can choose either to go into academia or to choose a path in industry, how are you making sure that pipeline stays relevant to like the rapidly changing nature of IoT and cybersecurity?
Through our partnerships. So we our partnerships are founded on research. So we're solving their problems that are our problems. So we find a common ground, And we establish these win-win scenarios. So where the sponsor and the faculty are locked in on some kind of problem, and the students, and there's everything is dragged along with that. The mentoring, the summer internship, all of that stuff. So it's a total package that we, as opposed to, the traditional. So it's a combination of things that's necessary again. And then the heavy, since we are hardware centric, which is unique, and that's by design, so that we have our own niche in this very wide field. And you mentioned, for example, the computer science folks. Computer scientists tend to abstract away from the hardware. So if you take for example, computer science person, and you give them a piece of hardware, they're going to struggle. They wouldn't know what to do with it. So versus our students who understand computer architecture, they understand algorithms, they understand data sets, they understand machine learning, and so forth. I would hedge my bet that those students would do a better job at,
in an industrial setting, right?
Yes, in an industrial setting. In most instances, you're faced with a black box, right? You're given a black box. So the three scenarios we deal with: white box, gray box, black box. White box, you got the data sheet, the clock rate, the what countermeasures. Gray box, you may not know the clock rate or what type of security methods are employed, but you know something. Black box, you don't know a thing. You don't know what kind of countermeasures are on there or whatever. So if you have to interrogate the device, you shake it up, it's done, because it had a
you let the magic smoke out. Yeah.
Yes. So and students have to know how to approach these three different situations and how to navigate through. And so is reverse engineering. It's all about reverse engineering, working backwards, taking notes, validating, verification and validation.
And hypotheses, to your point. I think it might work this way. How do I test to see if that's the case? Yeah.
I think it's doing this. So especially if you're using with side channel analysis techniques, you're using fault injection, you zap the device, you stimulate it, and you observe the response. And you stimulate it, you change the stimulus, and you zap it at a different portion of the device. Oh, you get a different response. And you do this, it's meticulous, but, so.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to add is that, we engage our students very early in the process in terms of getting them exposed to the facilities, the lab facilities, at the time they enter the doors at Morgan State University. And I think that has served itself very well in just maintaining the level of engagement that students have with the work that raises their confidence, their self-perceptions regarding the cyber area, that they're able to perform so well when they go on their internships, when they are interacting with our external partners. So we don't just do this at the graduate level or just when they're seniors with their capstone design projects, but we really engage them right out the door as they come into Morgan State University. And I think that really helps to solidify their mindset those critical thinking, how they go about solving problems, how they approach their classes. It really helps, and we've definitely seen the product of that.
So it's early and often. So it's continuous. And we also incorporate lessons learned. So there's a continuous improvement. So we close the loop, and from what we learn from our experiences to improve our processes. So this is the results from years of working with students. I've been in this profession since 1994. So, and understanding and students interacted with a broad class of students. So I've been at, Cornell, Georgia Tech, MIT. I've been at these places and where this land of plenty. And then I'm at a HBCU, and the students are different. So I had to think differently. I had to come up with these strategies to help achieve the same objective.
That is such an interesting perspective to have been in so many different academic institutions and then bring what you've learned there and adapt them to a different setting. Tell me more about some of those strategies that you've employed and what you've learned over, along the way.
Oh, you asked me to give away my secret sauce?
Maybe just a teaser.
Okay. Because I often get the question, well, why did you? Well, a lot of it, I believe a lot of it is passion. So I learned very early on, from my dad, what you put in is what you get out. So you really, this is law of physics, law of the universe, energy.
Conservation of energy, yeah.
Energy. So it starts with that, and a sense of commitment. And then so these are intangibles. So the other thing it takes is you have to be patient. That's one thing you have to learn, especially. I'm not my wife. Michel will tell you I'm not the most patient person. Because I'm very results driven.
Spouses don't come with data sheets though, so you could be forgiven.
Yes. So there are a lot of those I call intangibles that are part of the person. So, but it requires those attributes to really in those ingredients that make for the kind of success. But it's that and leveraging the experiences with the different types of students and knowing what you're working with. Okay, so understanding. So and it's really an engineering problem. So you look at the traditional student profile at MIT, Cornell, they very narrow distribution. The student profile at Morgan is all pass system, so it's very flat. So how do you shape these students to make it look like this? And so you have to develop strategies to help shape the curve, so to speak, and through leveraging partners, making sure one of the things, a lot of these kids don't have these experiential learning experiences or active learning experience until late in their to the fourth or fifth year. So, there's so many things. So understanding what you're working with and then coming up with strategies to circumvent or overcome a lot of those things. So we have various programs and activities that are sprinkled in. So Michel mentioned we have this continuing. So for example, we have this pre-freshman course where students come in the summer prior to their freshman year, summer of their freshman, the start of their first semester freshman year, and they get total immersion in calculus and physics, 6-week program. And then, but also we added a little sprinkle there. We give them 2 weeks of projects where we use hacker boxes, little projects with hacker boxes, just to wet their whistle. Then I take some fraction of those students, probably the top students, and then because they do an assessment at the end of the program, the summer program, and so that they can place the students in the right math section and physics section. Of those students, the tops, let's just say 5%, 5 to 10%, I offer them scholarships. Okay, and assign them with a peer mentor who is my graduate students, and who also likely went to the same school. Okay, so they are with them during the entire undergraduate matriculation. I help them get involved with internships early. So we assign them, we match them with the appropriate sponsor, and then, such that by the time at the back end, we also engage them with the capstone senior design projects. So some of them who actually make it, to the senior design project phase, we actually, at that point, we start talking about graduate school. At that point, there's an interest, a strong match. I give them, offer them a fellowship. So don't worry about grad school, you're funded, blah, blah, blah. And this is how we get them into, so we usher them through the various stages of the pipeline, and interspersing lots of active learning experiences. They also work on projects in the lab so that we can impart certain skills. We advise them on the courses, and then the peers also advise them. So there's a lot of inputs so that's how we do it.
That's the secret sauce.
I'll give you another ingredient to the secret sauce. The other ingredient would be connections, is having those connections, those relationships with the student outside of the academics. Yeah. That's really key for the population of students that we serve. We get the most success when we're able to establish those strong connections with our students. And yes, I think, Kevin, you want to add to that?
Yes, it's the whole process is relational from the very beginning, and maintaining that relationship throughout the engagement is key. Okay, so if you lose, and disruptions happen, life happens, but the key is to re-engage the student as quickly as you can, so that to maintain that momentum. So it's really relational.
And it sounds like the partnerships that you forge between industry and government and the students and faculty at CAP is a critical component to this as well. What are some of the things that have made really successful partnerships? Like, if you think of some of the best partnerships that you had historically, like what are the common themes?
Research, research collaboration, It's totally driven by research collaboration with the students engaged, where the student is out front. The student has given them that responsibility, giving them the freedom to grow and learn. So that's really the primary thing. It's putting this student-centric, student-focused. They are the end goal. So everything's driven. So once we get the student to a point, so because we understand how this whole process works. You only get one shot. We're HBCU. So so we better make it work. We don't get multiple opportunities. The students don't get multiple. So we're sort of like, we take the approach. There used to be a commercial that came out during my era. It was a wine commercial. Paul Masson, we sell no wine before its time. So we don't release the students to the partner unless they are ready. There's a lot of preparation that goes into. So we prepare these students for success, so that taking into account what we know about the sponsor, what they're looking for in a student, what kind of skills. So what kind of tools they use. So we prepare the students so that they hit the ground running when they get, and because they're always going to be compared with students from X university. And the feedback we always get at the end of summer, wow, we're so impressed. They're like, wow. But why? Our thing is, this is typical. This level of excellence is typical of our students. But one of the things we understand that there are these biases that we have to overcome, and that knowing that, because Michel and I lived it, we've been there, we understand it very well. So in order to prepare our students for success, the only way to do that is excellence, to overcome those things. Because the one thing that that's one thing that no one can take away from you, is that
objective excellence, just being awesome at what you do.
Yeah.
So another thing I wanted to add to that, in terms of what our most successful partnerships have been, has been those partners who are on board with our mission. Yes. And our vision as it relates to the student population that we serve and the things that we're trying to do, and also the investment that it takes to do it well. Those have been the most successful partners once they're on board with who we are, what we're doing, and how we're doing it.
Yeah.
And they become the champions at their organizations, actually on our behalf, once they see the things that we're trying to do and the students that we're grooming.
Yes,
in this area.
And that's the excellent point. It goes back to what I mentioned earlier, that it boils down to put your money where your mouth is. If you come, then those are the best. If you're transparent, honest, upfront with, you want a real research relationship. We say, well, this is what we do. This is what a research relationship looks like. If you want to play with us, let's play. Here's how you play. Let's play. As opposed to an alternative conversation, alternate conversation that goes, we want your students. That's a complete turnoff, because they're not looking at the value of the research. It's the research. Can you help? So as opposed to, can you help us solve this problem? You have this core competency, and the students are a natural byproduct of the process, right? So that's how we proceed with all of our engagements. Okay, so it's always based on research. It has a research foundation. So
That's so interesting. And, I can say as a small business owner, like the way that we think about recruiting talent is ingrained in a very narrow, I think, way of thinking, which is there's a pool of finished product out there. And my job is to find good fits within that pool for the sorts of things that I'm trying to do. And your counterpoint is, hey, well, why don't we build a relationship here? You can have number one, a stream of high quality work product that will help your core business. So that's in and of itself is an important component of this. But also through this continuing relationship, you have a way of shaping the pipeline and what comes out at the other end. And then it becomes sort of a blended approach.
yes, and think about it. You get a person, all the while you engage with the student, you have a relationship. You think by the time they graduate, you make them an offer, they're not going to take your offer. You know the student, you observed them from the very beginning. You looked under the hood, kicked the tires and everything. So
yeah, it's almost like, what are you afraid of if you're exposing the students to the way that you do business and what it's like working there?
they already know your culture, okay? Because they worked there a number of summers. So, and because for example, companies, some agencies within the intelligence community, people have this fear. Some students, we're going through the clearance process and working for. So they have this. And why do they have these misnomers? It's because of lack of knowledge. They don't know.
And no mentors in their network that have gone through that process and can give them ground truth.
Exactly. Yeah. So we give them that. So they're all the preconceived notions, all of that are kind of flushed out by the time they're ready for employment.
Right. So, I mean, it seems fairly clear that a concrete way that industry partners can contribute to the cause, the mission at CAB and Morgan State is partnering. Doing collaborative research and entering into an arrangement with the talented folks that you have on research, and then as a byproduct of that, having a really high quality stream of like highly trained, largely U.S. citizens. Which, let me tell you, that's a tough one, especially in the D.C. corridor, where a lot of the work that you do requires that.
Yes. So we get folks. All kinds of folks. It's just been crazy. Wanting to, say, oh, we want your students, blah, blah, blah. And the first thing I'm like, time out. Do I know you? Do we have a relationship? And it begins with, and it's formal. So let's sign mutual NDAs and let's have an MOU. Let's formalize the relationship so that we can have an informed discussion.
Right, because you want to make sure that, you put such a tremendous amount of effort over years in cultivating this coterie of like really talented folks. Like you want to be, I'm sure you want to be great mentors, and they're like your kids. You want to make sure that they're.
Yeah. So how am I going to? I don't know you, and you want me to entrust my kids to you. So that's basically how we feel about this.
Yeah, and it strikes me like as part of the strategy that you've built up over the past 4 or 5 years is it's a virtuous cycle, right? You have students that you start in this pipeline, and then there's this kind of revolving door of mentors that come back and are mentoring people. So it strikes me that it's of critical importance for these mentors to be placed in really strategically located parts of industry and academia, right?
Correct. Mentorship is one of the essential, the critical components that or ingredients that goes into the success. There's two things: opportunity and preparation. So we prepare our students such that when these opportunities come their way, they are successful. So those are the two main things. So we prepare them, as they go through this pipeline stage, such that when that opportunities, and they're going to be presented with these opportunities, but before we make sure they're prepared for those opportunities.
That makes so much sense. And so I think it's pretty clear, for people that not only, I should say, I think it is in industry's self-interest to tap into programs like CAP and get a really high quality stream of work product and cybersecurity professionals. That much is clear. I think there's also a really important recognizing where we are as an industry, that we all look a lot alike and we have a very narrow diversity of thought. And that in and of itself is a huge problem, right? And it's a self-perpetuating problem. And so, my question is, so it's fairly clear from an industry perspective, put your money where your mouth is and build partnerships with these incredible programs that like what you're growing. What can individual cybersecurity professionals do to be allies in helping to solve some of this cybersecurity diversity problem?
Serve as mentors. Volunteer to serve as mentors. Get involved with the Gen Cyber program, so that the kids get to see you and learn what you do and so forth. One of the things that we notice also is with regard to women, there aren't that very many women. We've noticed this fall. So the presence, and women need to see, other young ladies need to see women like Michel in front of them, so that to get involved, and they need to see them early and often, so that dynamic is essential.
Great. Michel, tell me a little bit about how you got into cybersecurity, and did you have any mentors, or give me a sense of what that path was like for you?
So the path into cybersecurity actually started with my husband, Kevin. When you read my bio, you see I have a very strong electronics, hardware, communications hardware type of background. And he also has that background as well. But, he was always encouraging me, you're going to have to think a little bit larger. Things are changing. You got to get on board. And that really began to just open up my mind as to exploring different areas. And one of that area was cyber, looking at what are the security issues or what are the cyber challenges that I can address with my particular background in electromagnetics, microwave, energy, radiation circuits, and things of that nature. And that's where the wireless security aspect came into it. So it wasn't something that was groomed, like you said, from a curriculum. It was kind of a haphazard way that I got into cyber, but I'm glad I did, because it really has expanded and enhanced the current capabilities that we're able to that we have inside of our center. So thank you, hubby.
So it's just like, it's the same thing. I inspire motivate my students, and this is what we do. So that's the passion side of me that comes out. So that's really that we talked about earlier. So that the passion is plays a big role in that. And selling, you have to sell. You got to sell it, and it has to make sense. But it's an easy sell once you have that. When you have that aha moment, it's like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. So, and it took several conversations with my wife, though.
I think it's good when, when we consider ourselves peers in this industry of technology and science, that we have these types of conversations among each other to network, to see what is the next big thing. What are those big, I forgot the word that NSF uses, these grand challenges, the areas that we need to start looking at next. And having these types of conversations, going out and networking with peers, I think is important, especially for faculty, whether you're junior faculty or mid-career faculty, or even if you are, a startup or an industry. It's good just to have these types of conversations in different forums so that we can be able to look at and address the next technical challenge that, of course, will come up within the near future. So, yes.
Well, Kevin, Michelle, I want to be respectful of your time. I mean, I think you should be. I'm sure you're so proud of what you've built, and I know it's incredibly exciting from my perspective that when we look at the critical shortage, like just absolutely critical shortage of cybersecurity professionals in this space, that you're taking a tried and true way of training highly technical people, the academic approach to things, and figuring out a way of meshing that with the 21st century way of doing business and bringing industry and government partners in. So that you have a pipeline of, sure, people that may continue on and do academic things, which is of critical importance, but also, have a really practical set of experiences and skills so that they're immediately ready to go into industry if that's what they choose to do. All the while doing that in a very critically underserved population that represents a problem that is self-perpetuating. And so I'm really excited about this. And so I'm really happy that you were able to set some time aside and talk through what you're doing. So hope to have you on again really soon.
Sure. Thank you for having us. This was great. So this relaxes me before my class, my lecture. Try lecturing to a bunch of kids who are, they seem to be logged on, but you don't really know if they're there or not.
Right.
Especially the cameras are off. Yep. The cameras are off and their microphones off. So you're wondering if they're listening and paying attention. So you ask a question, you get, so then
it's easier to fade into the background if there's no camera on.
Yeah.
Well, definitely thank you for having us on board today. It truly was an honor just to share our experiences and to talk about our students and the process by which we create these creams of the crops at Morgan State University. So thanks again.
Yeah, and thank you. And where can folks learn more about CREAM and CAP?
Oh, let me see. So let me our website at www.morgan.edu/CAP. CAP. So you can find us there, or you can navigate your way to the Morgan website. The drop down on research centers. We're listed there, or you can navigate to the School of Engineering website. We're listed there as well.
Great. Well, Kevin and Michelle, you've been amazing guests. Thank you so much for spending some time with us, and I look forward to doing it again really soon. Thank you for listening to this episode of Planes, Trains, and Tanks. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving us a review. To learn more about Shift5 and our products, visit our website at shift5.io or follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.